of Ink Medicine. I am your host, Micah Riot, and I am the tattoo artist behind Ink Medicine, also known as Micah Riot Tattoo. Am I any good? Sometimes. If you'd like to see for yourself, my work can be viewed on my Instagram account at Micah Riot. That's MICAHRIOT, or on my website, which is at www.micahriot.com. Unless you are a member of my Bay Area community, client base, a friend circle, we have not met. So I wanted to take this time to introduce myself. So who am I? In short, I'm an immigrant. I come from the former Soviet Union, and I came here to the States when I was 12 years old with my mom. She brought me here to get me away from anti-Semitism and give me a chance at a full life. And she succeeded. I am a non-binary queer human. I believe that there are as many genders as there are people, and I've believed that my entire life. I am queer. I have dated and had deep connections with people of all the genders you can put a label on and many genders you cannot put a label on. I'm currently in love and in deep long-term relationship with a woman, a cis woman, who is also in a long-term relationship with a cis man. So our partnership is polyamorous. I am a tattoo artist, as you know. I've been at it for 14 years. I'm also a former sex worker. I am an ex-spouse. Yes, I'm divorced. I am an avid reader. I am an obsessed human of the best spotted pit bull in the world, Lulu. I am a CrossFitter. I am a step parent. I'm an Aries. I also have Scorpio rising in my chart and a Sagittarius moon. So there's a lot of fire, a lot of intensity. Sometimes it's a lot, even for me. And it is still 2022, and I am 38 years old. So that's the short summary of me. Of course, each one of those things I can go on for paragraphs about, but I'm not going to do that. I will answer a few questions that I frequently get from my clients that relate to tattooing. And if you have other questions, you, of course, can email me. My email is micahtattoos@gmail.com. That's my name, Micah, M-I-C-A-H, the word tattoos, 2 T's, 2 O's, @gmail.com. Feel free. People ask me this often. I get asked, how did I start tattooing? When I was 13 years old, my mom and I settled in an apartment in West Hollywood, part of Los Angeles. It was a tiny apartment. We had a little one bedroom, of which I had the living room. And I spent a lot of time walking around. I walked all over, and I walked a lot on Melrose. And Melrose at the time in the late 90s was full of punks and goths and artists and tattoo shops and piercing shops. And I would look at people on Melrose and just love what I was seeing. I would look inside these shops. They seemed so magical to me. And I knew that I was fascinated. So when I started getting tattooed, my first one I got in college inside of a dorm room by a student. And the second one I got on Hollywood Boulevard when I was just, 18, 19 years old. I knew that this is something I wanted to do. It combines some of my favorite things: the human body, sensation, connection, permanence, and art. Yeah. I decided I would do it, whatever it took. And all through college, I thought about it. I thought, okay, this is going to be my next step. I'm going to learn to tattoo. I'll do it for a little while, and then I'll go to grad school and get a real job. So I moved to the Bay Area after college, and I work all kinds of jobs. I cleaned houses and I organized people's stuff, and I worked grocery store jobs, and I worked at group homes for a bunch of my time. I was a sex worker. I did it all, and none of it could sustain a very minimal lifestyle. I mean, my rent at the time was something like $500 a month, and I didn't have a car. I didn't have a dog. My bills were really minimal, and yet I still could barely scrape by. That was okay. Being in your 20s, you just make do with what you have. But tattooing was still in my mind. And as I was working this job at Trader Joe's, I had to show up there at 5 a.m. So on a really rare night out, I decided I would go out to a friend's birthday party at a bar. I met the woman who owned the first shop I ever worked at. And we became friends. We became close. And after a little while, she asked me if I would do some work at the front desk of the shop. And I said, yes, of course. I was fascinated with tattoo culture, and I wanted to be close to it. And I started working the desk and doing various tasks for her, like ordering supplies and helping her with technology. And after a little while of being there, another tattoo artist who was working there took a liking to me and asked me if I would want to apprentice. And I said yes. And so I apprenticed for about a year. I loved it right away. Every tattoo, every little thing I got to do, I was just so ecstatic that I got to do it. I adored it. I was at the shop 6-7 days a week. I rarely took days off. I was just obsessed. And so after my apprenticeship, I kept working at the same shop. I worked there for a few years. It was a big, loud walk-in shop. People came in and out. We were really busy. There were really rarely slow periods. It was an all-women's shop for a while, and then it became an everybody shop. And after a few years of being there, I was like, you know what? I want a quieter environment. This is a lot. And so I went to work at another shop, a smaller shop that just had a couple of artists. And I was there for another 2 years. And after that, tattoo culture started shifting. It was no longer about walking into a shop and looking at books and picking at artists. And it became much more about Instagram and online presence. And I had a good portfolio online, and I had a good Instagram presence. People were able to find me. I got lots of emails. And so I decided I was ready to go out on my own. So I rented a small space in the Mission that was cheap and good and solid and close to my house. And I worked there for the next bunch of years. And after a while, it became a little small. I got my dog, and I had to move to the East Bay to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city and my tiny studio. So I ended up buying a car and moving to the East Bay, and then I needed to move my shop too. So a little while later, I moved my studio to San Leandro, where I have a really beautiful space, and I'm really happy there. Lots of light and just the perfect size. I do think sometimes about starting a bigger space, a bigger shop, taking on an artist to work with me, or maybe an apprentice. And I think those things might still be coming in my life. But as of now, it's just me. And I did have my very first guest artist come and join me earlier this year in September. And it was wonderful. I really loved having the guest there for a week. And I am also really happy being there by myself. So, do I have an art degree? I do not have an art degree. I've been drawing and painting my entire life since I remember myself, but a formal art education was not something that I pursued. It was the classes that I had access to when I was in school. I didn't feel like I had access to them. There was a lot of people wanting to be in those classes, and I after spending my childhood standing in lines for bread in Russia, I did not want to stand in lines for classes. So I just took what I could. And what I ended up taking was a lot of women's studies courses and some literature courses and a bunch of photography courses. I got lucky and got into the photography program. So my degree ended up being in women's studies, gender studies, and photography. Just as a side note, I really, although I think an art education for sure is helpful in tattoo art, in making good tattoos, I think there's a lot of other skills that make the tattoo artists good. People skills, communication skills, bedside manner. All of those skills are just as important. And of course, knowing how to create a beautiful image and how to place it on the skin are incredibly important too. Honestly, I feel like I learned basically everything I know about art on the job. I read and I look at art and I study it and I practice. And this is how I learned to create the beautiful images you see in my portfolio. What do I like tattooing the most? To be honest, I tattoo all different styles, and what I like tattooing the most changes month in, month out. The most important part for me of my enjoyment of the process is working with a client that I have really good flow with. I tend to be quite careful about who I tattoo and who I invite into that space and who I share this experience with. So I like all of my clients, but I have certain clients, with them I have a flow that is hard to explain in regular terms, but there's a trust there, there's a mutual trust there, and a mutual enjoyment of each other's energy. And I think it's the trust probably that makes it so good. And then there's also a match with personal style, where I know instinctively, and also by looking at them and also by talking to them, what it is they like, and I know that I can provide it. And so there's that exchange of energy and then knowing and meeting each other. And sometimes it's so seamless. It's not even something that is acknowledged, but there's certain people I have such good flow with, and those are my favorite experiences. I will leave it there. You are welcome to send me more questions. I will answer them in the next episodes of the podcast. Next week, I'll be talking to one of my favorite current clients. I've been tattooing this person for years, on and off. We did a piece and then took a long break, and now he's come back for a sleeve, and he's a really fascinating person. Why? Well, you'll find out soon enough. Mark works 2 jobs, and his second job fascinates me to no end. So you should tune in and listen to our conversation. We'll be talking about all kinds of interesting out there things that don't feel so out there to us, but they are a little bit out of the ordinary. Tune in, and if you have other questions or comments, you can email me at micahtattoos@gmail.com. That's micahtattoos@gmail.com. Thank you, my darlings. Have a very lovely rest of your day or night.